This essay example, as well as thousands of others, is available in text format on our website for free and without registration. Simply Google Ivy Panda Free Essays.
At the beginning of the novel The Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde, the author explains the meaning of Fuku, generally a curse or a doom of some kind, specifically the curse and the doom of the New World. These explanations frame the main theme of the novel, which is confined to describing Oscar's miserable life and his family, as well as his failed attempts to become recognized and find love in life. Within this context, the novel argues that the curse, or Fuku, pursues Oscar and his family across generations, dooming them to tragic accidents and the character's inability to find love and reconciliation. Nevertheless, the author hopes for Zafa to counteract all the burdens that the de Leon family faces. The story itself is aimed at reverting to the negative experience of the immigrants. To enhance the theme of Fuku, the author refers to the flashbacks from the past to describe the hard experiences that Oscar's relatives had to face. This is of particular concern to the protagonist's mother, Belly, and his grandfather, Aberald. In particular, the chapter is dedicated to Belly's difficult life as she was raised in an abusive family. Similar to her son Oscar, Belly cannot settle her personal life because of her social status. Her further fate is also followed by complications, and she is doomed to become a social outcast. To emphasize the evident presence of the curse, the author writes, "She was in the grips of the darkness, passed through days as a shade passes through life." Although she is always on the edge of death while undergoing hardships due to the Fuku, the heroine manages to survive as the godlike mongoose helps her. The undertone of magical realism is intertwined with the story's events to fit in the concepts of Fuku and Zafa as something natural happening to the characters. To render the mystery and mythological themes of Fuku, the author experiments with various styles and assigns different narrators in the chapters of the novel. Specific attention requires Oscar's speech that presents a language premised on his knowledge of fiction, the so-called nerd literature. The use of new words and phrases creates a connection between the real world in which the surrounding people live and the fictional world with which Oscar is obsessed. Most of the phrases like "I do not move so precipitously" or "I think she's orchidaceous" are skillfully combined with literary language. In addition to the autodidactic speech, there is an evident combination of Spanish and English languages that point to the protagonist's ancestry. The presence of various dialects also explains the author's close adherence to the mythology of Fuku and Zafa. For instance, the fictional narrator of the story, Junior, makes use of a mixture of both languages, representing the identity and alter ego of Junot Diaz. The choice of the narrator, however, changes from one chapter to another to convey various perspectives on a specific occasion. The importance of introducing various speakers in this part of the novel establishes the level of the author's engagement in the story, as well as his relation to the theme of Fuku and Zafa in his life. In The Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde, Diaz often resorts to symbolism and symbolic relations between characters, which is typical of the style of magic realism. In this respect, Fuku is symbolically represented through the governmental authorities and antagonists, including the cruel dictator Trujillo, who persecutes Oscar, his mother, and his grandfather. In contrast, the novel also represents the golden mongoose, symbolizing Zafa. This animal is also an immigrant because it originates from Asia, Europe, and Africa. Similar to the Oscar family, the mongoose migrated to the Dominican Republic. Although the creature is considered a representative of an alien culture, the mongoose is depicted as a cunning and amicable animal that successfully socializes and communicates with other characters. The mongoose's identification with Zafa is also represented in many scenes of the novel. For instance, the animal helps Belly survive the attack by Trujillo's people. Oscar also encounters the golden mongoose, who protects him from the dangerous confrontation. Although the creature exists in real nature, its mysterious origins are highlighted by its sudden appearance and disappearance in the story. Belly and Oscar's encounters with the mongoose cannot be proved because none of the characters can determine whether the creature is real or the product of their imagination. Throughout the novel, Diaz does not only refer to science fiction through flashbacks, symbolism, and language but also creates a fictional framework imposed on the reality in which the protagonist lives. Constant interaction with fantasy and imaginary worlds creates a link between the historical background of the characters involved in the plot and the supernatural events. From the first pages, the author establishes a peculiar style of exposition of novel details through references to the supernatural. In addition, there is also a constant metaphorical comparison of the leading heroes in the story, including Trujillo's agent, who is depicted as the Witch King of Angmar, and Diaz's constant questioning about the sci-fi reality of Santo Domingo. Involving fantastical elements in the narration seeks to provide a fictional perspective for readers to grasp the spectrum of influences on the part of antagonistic powers personifying Fuku. Moreover, the curse of negative consequences is represented through the surreal dictatorship of the Dominican leader. In addition, the book relies on the surreal events relating to Abelard and Belly, who often confront serious challenges but manage to survive. Hence, constant denial and acceptance of reality contribute to the overall mystery of Fuku and Zafa's reflection in the novel. In conclusion, strict adherence to the mythological concept of Fuku and Zafa shapes the contextual framework for deliberating on the story events and characters' negative experiences. In particular, Fuku represents the hardships that every family can face, specifically those who migrated from other countries and who are regarded as social outcasts. In this respect, the De Leon family is subjected to constant suffering due to the dominance of Trujillo's power and his influence on the fates of Oscar's family members. In order to disclose the theme, the author resorts to such literary devices as flashback references, language peculiarities, and symbolic relationships that strengthen the main scope of the curse and its opposition. Therefore, both Fuku and Zafa are the leading concepts highlighting the immigrant experience and relating the eternal confrontation of the new world with the limits created by identity, culture, and personal outlooks on life. Diaz introduces the story as a response to the hard experiences of immigrant families. This essay on exploring mythology of Fuku and Zafa in Junot Diaz's The Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Weyo was written and submitted by a student just like you. The Ivy Panda Samples database hosts thousands of works similar to this one, on various subjects. Visit ivypanda.com to find what you are looking for.